the touch of your fingerprint. Secure, fast, and no password to remember. For a limited time, get a free $300 gift card with purchase. Visit a Microsoft store near you today. All right, welcome into the Pocketnow Weekly. When it comes to the need for speed, we're not talking about BlackBerry here. We're talking about OnePlus. But then again, we are talking about BlackBerry because this week, BlackBerry thinks it has introduced a new interface paradigm that removes one Android screen from the experience entirely. Also, will this new hardware combination on the KEY2 really still deliver 2-day battery life as its predecessor did? We have our questions. We'll try to get some answers for you. Plus, WWDC 2018 happened on Tuesday, so we'll give you a quick lowdown of what we think the biggest takeaways are. ZTE is out of the frying pan and into the fire, while Qualcomm and Sprint have had their own splashes in the pool this week. We chat with Jaime Rivera and our good friend of the show, Andrew Wallace, on this episode 308 of the Pocketnow Weekly, recorded at 7:04 p.m. Eastern Time on June the 8th. This podcast is about all the mobile technology that you can care to dream about ever since you were a kid. Smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, tablets, everything that you could ever, maybe you can have like a button or two that just magically poofs out whatever you want. I don't know, maybe Amazon has that already.
Or 35 buttons.
Or 35 buttons. Well, we're talking about keys, though. Keys are different from buttons. Anyways, I am Jules Wong, one of the hosts of the Pocketnow Weekly, also news editor here. I am joined, as you can probably tell, by Jaime Rivera, multimedia manager, who is sitting about, 10 feet ahead of me over here in the same office? Hello.
Hey, Joel.
Yeah, we're in the Tower 49, which is a WeWork space, and he has the brightly lit open area kind of thing.
This is my favorite spot.
I mean, it's great. I mean, I'm kind of a little worried about the noise.
By the way, Jules is right there.
Hi, yo, which is great for people that are listening to this podcast.
What are you complaining about?
Well, I mean, you look at my content, it's just it's dingy. There's this light over here that doesn't make sense for some reason. Anyways, putting that all aside for just a second, we have our friend, as we have said, for the past, I don't know, couple of years it's been, Andrew Wallace, Fat Produce on Twitter. Hello to you.
Hello, guys. Boy, this is a heck of an exciting week for news and hardware and software.
Yeah,
I'm pretty excited to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
No intentions to be a problem. I'm just trying to make up words as we go along here. As we have quite a back show in itself, we'll try to get through it as quickly as possible because we like conciseness here. I think the best way to start this off is by explaining to people how that you, the listener, the viewer, can participate in all of this craziness. And I think Jaime Rivera, you should be the one to do that job.
Why should I be the person to do that job, Jules?
Because
no, I'm kidding. I was trying to start an Instagram story, but Instagram stories on Android are the worst.
This is all in vivo, folks.
I can't even tell if this thing is recording already, but for those of you that don't know, you can join the podcast. Start the conversation at podcast@pocketnow.com. Use the hashtag PNWeekly as well. Have I forgotten anything, Jules? And God, I hate Instagram on Android. I apologize.
Yeah, we're also on Instagram, Pocketnow on Instagram. He's on Jaime Rivera, JAIMERIVERA. So
got it right.
Everyone's here. Everyone's on Instagram. Everyone's on the socials. But we're all here right now to talk about the BlackBerry KEY2. The launch event was just yesterday. I was there. Jaime was there. And we actually got a little preview too, with a little bonus. So let's get into the specs of this thing. We're talking about Snapdragon 660 here with 6 gigs of RAM standard.
Podcast.
Big deal to bring that up from 3 gigs on the Key 1, 64, 128 storage. Now, I'm overlooking all the important points here because we're talking about BlackBerry phone. We're talking about Key 1 successor, and that means bringing back that 3x2 display, or is that 3x2 or no 4x3? That's
4x3.
Yeah, trying to get that aspect ratio right, and then you make room for all that with the 35 key keyboard, or is it 36 now?
35.
Is it still 35?
Yeah, 35.
Or we're not. I mean, I'm trying to get in the speed key. I'm trying to reference that. Is that like a bonus key, or was that last year's 34 key?
I'm trying to remember what it was before. I'm just, the spec sheet says 35.
Well,
go for it.
I was looking at it, and didn't the Key 1 have the shift on either side? And
I don't have the Key 2, the Key 1 with me right now.
Because I thought it had the shift on both sides, but it looks like they replaced the shift with that second button that we'll get to. Because I was sure it had it on both sides, I thought. Before.
So David Kogan here is from the Lockers here, by the way. He's just
right behind.
He's looking at the spec sheet of GSM Arena, and it's a 3x2 aspect ratio according to the good guy.
So I did get my freaking math right. Okay, I was scared for a second. Come on. Don't leave me on a ledge like that.
I don't remember what the other key was, but I don't know. For me, regardless of what the usage was, the concept of the speed key is probably what I like the most. And since we're talking Key 2, probably one of the main reasons. So I read a lot of the comments over at the hands-on over why is the Key 2 the phone that I'm looking forward to using the most. And it's funny because most people are making the concept of, oh, it doesn't have a Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 or this and that, and it's priced not very aggressively. But the main reason is because I guess it's the phone that I can make mine the most, if you think about it. Like that whole concept of being able to program all the keys on that keyboard. I know particularly what the letter A is going to dial, what the letter G is going to dial, and and that speed key allowing me to be able to do it from whichever app I'm in, because I found that really annoying with the Key 1.
So, let's explain.
Jump to the home screen. Go for it.
Yeah, let's explain what the speed key is. So it's on the bottom right of the phone. I wish I could show you with a screen capture or a device. I mean, we had them yesterday, and now
just watch the hands-on. It's there.
Just watch the hands-on. Yeah. But in any case, the speed key located in the lower right, and instead of having to go through the home screen or the multitask pane to scroll through and find whatever apps, or maybe, again, you haven't even opened the app in a while, so you have to go through the home screen and the app drawer to get to that app. Well, if you already have assigned the app that you want, a shortcut via just the QWERTY keyboard or whatever, you can hold down on the speed key and then tap on the key that corresponds to that app, and then you get in.
Yeah.
You save yourself a couple of screens, a lot of swiping, and they're talking about this as a shift in paradigm in terms of the Android user experience. So I wonder, first of all, what you say. Go ahead, Jaime.
For me, it's crucial. I mock how much it takes for you to make a phone call on an iPhone. I mock the whole concept of how difficult it is. You can't program widgets to dial phone numbers. So literally what you're left with is you have to go into the dialer, look for the contact, and then dial. Go into the contact card and then dial. Whereas with the Key 2, all you'll have to do is speed key and whatever letter you've set for that particular favorite contact of yours, and it just makes the process so easy. I care about those things. It's funny when many manufacturers are using phrases like, "Oh, but nobody makes phone calls anymore." I'm like, I'm sorry. The fact that the smartphone demographic has grown so much over time, and that most of that demographic doesn't make as much phone calls, doesn't mean that people make less calls. It's just one of the things that the majority of smartphone users do the least. But bear in mind, if you grab the graphic and you left the same amount of people that were making phone calls 10 years ago to the ones that are today, obviously there was a lot less population using smartphones so many years ago, so phone calls wasn't a thing. Phone calls was more of a thing. But I make as many phone calls today as I did before. So I like the concept of having an easy way to jump in and out to whatever I want to do.
And there are so many clients too, so many messaging clients that we juggle between like WhatsApp and Hangouts and all these things because everyone's growing up in a different ecosystem and everyone else is just like, okay, so how do we do that? It's so hard to switch between these things, and just even having the apps installed, like that's already a hump in the process. Andrew, I'm wondering about you and how you feel about the speed key and what relates to your multitasking experience.
I really am excited by it because potentially, I mean, I'm the type of guy where I just have pretty much a bare bones home screen layout where I just have, the home screen with my icon, with my icons and apps that I want. And then the second page is just a giant widget for my calendar. At this point, you could pretty much conceivably not even have to use your home screen in the traditional way that you would, because if you're really methodical and you assign everything that you're going to normally use every day, you've pretty much got that at your fingertips, and then you can just kind of have that as an additional display for whatever extra stuff you
like a concept phone. Imagine you start off with just a browser and then and a settings app, and you just have to assign everything a key. Like that would, of course, I think that like the uphill challenge is going to be hard, but I think at least some people are going to be very, very happy by it.
I like the concept of a home screen because for me, it's a bird's eye view to the things I care about. So I care a lot about things, funny, but I care a lot about things like the weather. I care a lot about my calendar. People make fun of my home screen in video reviews, but it's just not going to change. I've been using that layout since back in the HTC Touch days. That whole, and people don't remember, but that was like the first phone that came up with the whole concept of having a large widget with your clock.
Yeah, that combined widget.
And then if you remember back in the days of Windows Mobile, you could put your calendar below that in your home screen. You could put your tasks after that. And I love a bird's eye. For me, having an icon for quick access to a particular app is actually, these are things that I actually avoid. That's the reason why I have them all in folders. I force myself to have an extra step to go into these apps because a lot of these apps are designed to suck me in and not let me be productive. And so I even asked these guys from BlackBerry, I'm like, guys, can you guys just bring back the old home screen concept that you had? Where if you remember the days, well, you probably don't, Jules, but back in the days of the BlackBerry Pearl, you were too young.
Don't make me come over there.
All you have to do is stretch your arm, bud. I love the whole concept of that, having my calendar, having the things I care about. So I asked them, is there a way for us to, who says that the current launcher on Android is necessarily the best idea? Like, instead of having widgets, I would love to have like a sort of like a today screen, which is what Windows Mobile had. That's what Windows Mobile had. It wasn't a home screen. It was called the today screen. I love that concept. And for me, that was like the easiest way to remain focused on the things that I cared about and not focused on apps.
Right. Well,
what about BlackBerry Hub?
Well, speaking of the home screen, I know on the Key 1 this was the case, and I don't think they ever really addressed this. Can you still not use the shortcut keys if you're using a custom launcher? Then, because that's one thing where, like, I'm the guy who always has no launcher on everything.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the unfortunate things that they were saying about the Key 1, as far as the software, you couldn't really do that. And I even reached out at the time to the Nova dev team, and they said that they had a lot of other things on their priority than making, compatibility for that.
The Key 1 sold more than BlackBerry expected, but it didn't sell like
right. Well, it was kind of
hard. It's a very niche. It's a very niche product. I wasn't expecting it to sell crazy, but it's funny. The other day there was in Google I/O last year. It was Joshua Vergara, Michael Fisher, Nirav, and I'm trying to remember two other people that were at that event, and they were all carrying a Key 1. That just gives you an idea of how big the Key 1 was, at least for us reviewers. Because what do we reviewers care about? We do a lot of email, sadly. We do a lot of content consumption. Sure, it wasn't the best for content consumption, but the battery life was just so epic. It was the perfect phone for trade shows. It was the perfect phone for trade shows.
Well, it's probably good too, because being a productivity focused device, like as far as content consumption, it kind of with that small of a screen and that offset, like it's kind of nice for not tempting you into just being in the phone forever. Basically.
Yeah, I we've even noticed that. What is that?
Come on.
My bad. Don't worry about it. So I even like, for example, concepts on Android P and that began on Android P and now iOS 12, where they're trying to push for users to be aware of how much they're on their phones. I like that whole concept of having a product that's actually not necessarily about being away from my phone, but to a certain degree in facilitating certain tasks for the phone to be available to me, but for me to focus on other things. Not to be just about playing Candy Crush.
Yeah. Andrew Sislak on the Twitters here, #PM Weekly. Auto hotkey for Android, haha. Now, I happen to know that this is a Windows script that basically allowed you to do shortcuts for any key press that you do on Windows. And I know that YouTuber Tom Scott was able to manage doing just an emoji keyboard where he plugged in 12 keyboards and every one of them put out a freaking emoji at the time that was available, and they had skin modifiers, so just press the whatever tone that you have along with the person that you need to I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that Android could be using but it isn't, and I
love it. For me, it's a new form factor, Jules. It gives people choice.
Yeah.
I said it in my review. In my hands-on video. Actually, what I said was actually repeating what the presenter was saying during our briefing. The fact that they're not rushing to follow the same trend where everybody's adding notches to their phones and everybody is stretching 18:9 aspect ratio. I love that we have a counter product that gives people a choice, because a lot of these design choices, like the case of the notch, sure, I will say it and I will repeat it. I prefer a notch over bezels. I agree with it. If that's what I have to deal with for right now, fine, I'll deal with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only form factor. We have an operating system designed to be malleable to whatever you want. People even boast over the fact that Android is free, aka and whatever, and yet OEMs are not being unique. They're actually just following each other. Seriously, you get the iPhone 10 launching with a notch, and then how many phones have launched with a notch all year? Yes, OnePlus 6. You're one of those examples.
Yeah, it seems like we have four kind of there's the mainstream that we always see, which is what everyone's kind of going for. We've got the gaming enthusiast sort of devices we're seeing in the Razer phone and the Asus one, and then we've got the KEY1 and KEY2 sort of BlackBerry enthusiast ones, and then we've got that ZTE Axon, the dual screen sort of thing. But those are really
the Axon M. Oh yeah,
the Axon M.
That was such a bad phone, man.
I know. It's better than the Kyocera Echo.
But listen, it's the fact that it was bad.
Yeah,
it was such a bad. So it was good when I saw it in the briefing. I was looking forward to it, and then they sent me the unit, and they sent me 2 units actually. There were issues with both, and I was like, okay, no. Yeah. And so I like, for example, the cases of gaming phones. In the case of the KEY2, my biggest complaint with the KEY1, aside from the mushiness of the keys, was because it was just such a steep learning curve to go back to the concept of using an actual keyboard. That for me was difficult in its own, and then the keyboard wasn't really comfortable to use. But then the second thing was the unit that I used was the 3 GB of RAM. It wasn't until eventually that they sent me the 4 gig black variant. And so, oh my God, launching that camera or taking a photo was very slow. It was good for everything else, but I do care about my photos. I do care about taking good photography. And so, I mean, now that we're going to have the Snapdragon 7 series, I would even wonder if the company would be willing to launch another variant. But obviously, I have to test this one. If the camera launches fast, then I don't really care. I'm not going to do 4K at 60 on a phone. That's just it. I do it for certain particular usage scenarios, and then it's very hard to find a good Android phone that does that. And so, you know, those are the things where these are the things that I care about. I care about a phone that's all that I don't have to worry about battery and anxiety.
Yeah.
That's
well, I mean, you talk about battery anxiety. Let's just face it. So we're dealing with a new processor. The great thing about last year was that we had that Snapdragon 625, which I think was already proven even before the KEY2 to be a great battery efficient processor. Yeah. All the stuff in it just happened to work out. So that 3,500 milliamp battery really did last a full weekend.
Oh my God. It was the best phone for that, man. Like it was the trade show phone. It was literally the trade show phone.
Go ahead, please.
One thing I was wondering, because I was a little bit disappointed with the KEY2, and I'm not sure if this was a processor limitation, but the lack of RAW support on the camera. Because you'd think that with especially something it gives you a little bit more wiggle room. I would feel like in being able to make your photos look nice, especially if you're doing something in something that's not quite going to be great lighting for something that's like a mid-ranger sort of camera. You'd think. Are you able to speak to or to? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do. Like for example, you have to understand. A lot of the capabilities, like super slow-mo, is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 thing, and it's actually not even the 960 frames per second at 720p. The Snapdragon 845 is only capable of 480 frames per second at 720. The rest is a play they do with RAM.
With RAM and interlacing and
yeah, it's the reason why in the case of the OnePlus 6 you can only do what the processor can do, but you can do it for a full minute, whereas on the Galaxy S9 Plus you can only do it for 20 seconds. And so a lot of those things like 4K video at 60, that type of video, all of these things are actually a processor thing. I would lie if I would say that raw photos are as well. I don't know. But I believe that will most likely be the case. Now this phone has a ton of RAM, so who knows?
Because obviously that really helps.
That part of the settings.
The ISP does help. I mean, it's vastly improved from prior generations in the 6 series, especially with that new cryo architecture that they're using. But again, we'll have to see whether that battery holds up, because this is our first time, especially with that cryo architecture instead of like that weird magic that was brought about. Do you want to bring up software while we have the chance, while we have Jaime here for a little bit?
BBM.
Yeah, BBM.
We were making fun of that because I'm like all my friends that were on BBM are gone.
And now.
I'd be interested to see how many active users there still are with BBM and what the demographics of where in the world they are.
Again, they're talking about international. They're talking about Latin America, or even like Eastern Europe as well. So, like, it's those odd places that they keep up the servers for. It's just that, well, I mean, we've all moved on to Facebook Messenger, to more data intensive, more like stickers and whatnot, like those things. I mean, BBM served its purpose. I've been talking about this with Danny Widget when we were snoozing on top of a Times Square rooftop, but it was like BlackBerry's success in the consumer market between 2005 and 2009 was purely accidental. We still had QWERTY keyboards that actually went with the familiar layout instead of like a cube thing with the KEY2 where it's all squared out. And I was not able to get along at all with the freaking squared out layout.
I love those days. Don't get me wrong, man. But phones were really good about communication.
Yeah, exactly. And that was when the communication was being made accessible to everyone, to more teens and all those people at a wider basis and with more features. BBM again, more features at the time. So and now we're kind of past that age.
For me, I guess. This would be speaking of software, again, I had a good conversation with people at BlackBerry, and I made the comment, this would be like the only phone that I would actually like for a manufacturer to skip. Because it's not designed to be an Android phone to a certain degree. It's designed to follow on a different mentality. But, there's a lot of disconnect between the whole user interface that's touch-oriented and the keyboard. And so it was one of those things where I was like, shoot, like I would actually like if you could give me something like a Today screen where the home screen is different, and I get the option if I want to switch back to your typical screen, then fine. Whatever the case, I like the software because it's minimalistic. I like the software because it's nearly stock. I love the fact that I could launch applications by simply sliding up. For me, that's great. But then I still feel that there's a disconnect in certain features that I wish were better.
Well, yeah. What's going to happen with Android P and all the gesture support and the new thing at the bottom? Because that's what I'm thinking. It still has capacitive keys, doesn't it?
Yes.
That's going to be a nightmare.
I mean, especially with the fast-tracked support from Qualcomm about Android.
But it's optional. That gesture layout is optional on Android P. Yeah. That's the thing.
That's good, though. That's good. Well, and I'd love to see just more of that gesture baked in. Just because, I mean, gosh, if I was going to be using it, I'd probably just be using the keyboard to swipe around.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel that a third iteration of the key, probably the Key 3, I would love for them to tinker a little with the software a little further and come up with something unique. But that's just me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's always hope that BlackBerry will clean things up as much as the cleaner outside our facilities here is cleaning things up. Good on her for doing that right now. Want to give some due notice to the software for the enterprise side, because of course this is an Android enterprise recommended for enterprise. I don't remember the freaking acronym for it, but it's like
it's secure.
But we're talking about.
I think the average consumer doesn't care.
They don't care, but I mean, we're still talking about.
But I do like things like, for example, the fact that if the camera launches or the microphone is listening, the phone will tell you. Yeah. Right now, Android doesn't, and we've had so many cases where the other day we were with Kogan. I forgot what we were talking about, but it was like a Star Wars movie that's very old. Nothing in theory was listening in, and then the first YouTube video that when I launched the YouTube app, the first video that popped up at the top was a video of that movie that we were talking about. That was creepy. That was really creepy. And so for me, it's like, okay, yes, give me that key too. Now, yes.
You know, if it was one of those Ewok movies, then it's going to be even more creepy.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like Ewoks, Google Assistant has found many of these Ewok movies for your pleasure and have provided the playlist.
No, let's keep going, Jules.
Yeah. Secured folder. We're talking about securing certain apps, certain files with a passcode or fingerprint.
I wonder what took them so long to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a simple. Well, I mean,
Huawei does it. Huawei
update the software.
Oppo was, I think, the first company to do that. And you know, the Galaxies since the Note 8 do it, I think, or Note 7.
Yeah. So in some ways they're catching up. In some ways, what they're already. I mean, again, there's a hardened OS, whatever that particularly means, but they're pulling up all the stops to make sure that this is something that a business person or someone with trade secrets or whatever can use safely and securely and just feel like it. And also, I don't know about the price at a fairly affordable price. I mean, we're talking about scaling deployment, $649 US.
I'm sorry, that price is off.
Yeah, well, it's like they didn't they? You know,
doesn't it last
did a whole lot of R&D.
No, the Key one was priced at like 500 something.
It was 550.
And so here's the thing: when I was briefed on the Key 1, one of the premises for the price tag had a lot to do with the fact that these phones were bought by enterprise companies, and so enterprise doesn't buy just one phone; they buy 100, and so they were pricing it at that segment mainly because they wanted to make it easy for the enterprise to buy the phone. If you remember, man, back in the old days, no, you don't, Jules, but probably you, Andrew. Back in the day of the BlackBerry's, the old ones, like there were all prices from $200 up until, like, if you wanted to get the full blown bold, it was, you know,
$9900 all the way down to like the 8530 and whatnot.
Yeah, no, they had the Curve, they had the Pearl, they had so many different variants that made it easy. Right now, BlackBerry doesn't have any entry-level options, so it's a tough sell. I feel $650 is too much for this phone.
Well, would you say that some of the older, I guess they're a little over a year and old now, the older D-Tech ones would count as their entry level?
If they still have them, but like their BlackBerry Motion is not being sold here in the States. I actually have a unit, and it's one of the main reasons why I didn't review it. So I know the problem is, the keyboard they should come up with like a key. They need to pull something out that's at the $400 price tag.
Honestly, I think they should still sell the Key 1 a little bit.
That's a good point. If they
would save money on retooling.
If they keep the Key 1, the 4 GB variant, I don't recommend the 3, ladies and gentlemen. But the 4 GB variant was good. That for me would be it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, indeed. So with all of that, I think that's a safe conclusion. Or do you have something a little bit more to share in terms of wrapping this up?
I'm good.
Good. All right. Well then, Jaime Rivera, thank you for joining us for the time being. I mean,
I could stay for 10 minutes more, and I'll let you know.
10 minutes more? Okay. All right. Well, and if you want to learn more from Jaime Rivera about this Key 2, then you can definitely check out our YouTube page for the full hands-on experience as well. All right. In the meantime, I think it is time to get to some more news from the week. And here we start off with ZTE coming out of a long 3-month-long tunnel, getting through to that imports ban being crushed. And, well, they're now agreeing to some strict, or the strictest settlement terms with the U.S. Commerce Department. We'll start off with the fact that they're paying an extra $1 billion in addition to $400 million as collateral for just being able to source parts from the U.S. again. They've been locked out of the market for about 3 months because they were found to have broken the terms of a previous settlement that was made over concerns of trade sanction violations doing business with Iranian and North Korean firms. And then we're talking about compliance measures. We're talking about a second compliance monitor to the first one that they already have. And also the fact that they have to change up executives really, really fast, like within 30 days. And that has people, that has investors, that has the company on edge, and people are kind of scared. So
I think you and I were having this conversation about ZTE, and we're like, the company is doomed and this and that. And I'm like, that doesn't work that way. Legally, every company's entitled to fight back and figure out a way to make things right. And legally, that's the way the system works. You are guilty until proven otherwise, or
well, it was
I don't know here in the United States.
It was especially keen in this case because we're talking about a Donald Trump presidency, and this conservative, officials that are trying to make deals. And again, it was Donald Trump that was bringing up the trade war with China that says that he can win, and this move could be seen as a tit for tat kind of deal, especially as other things like agricultural goods or even just steel. Steel has been the biggest hit factor.
The thing about it is, I mean, ZTE is one of the major suppliers for 5G. So it's not just, trust me, ZTE's business is not about phones.
Well, yeah, I mean, biggest supplier in European networks, Asian networks, not particularly in the U.S., which makes this enforcement action kind of strange. But, I mean, it's partly also the fear of Chinese authoritative actions because they have been censoring their internet very heavily. They've been making territorial claims around the world and just making sure that they exert their influence on what kinds of policies that they want.
Well, and one thing that I think a lot of the damage that's going to stem from this seems to be just reputation, as far as part of the settlement isn't that they have like a board that's directly answerable to entities in the United States.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how that's going to affect their business relationships that they have in China right now currently. If that's going to cause negative perception of the company, one, because they're going to be changing around all of their management, and they're going to be having kind of insider, like a U.S. presence at a high level in the company. And is that going to
because as much as
relationships?
Exactly,
it goes both ways, man. Like
as much as we see
commerce,
China,
the word trade in itself means dual, in each way. So trust me, ZT is oh my god, so I did a media tour with them a couple of years ago. God, that company's huge. They're huge. Like, they represent a huge part of China's commerce. So trust me, it's not just the reputation towards ZTE, it's the other way back. They consume a lot of what's produced around here and around everywhere. So it's one of those things where, I felt that this is what was going to happen. Of course, the company did to make changes, but legally they were entitled to get a shot and figure things out. And particularly as we get closer to the launch of 5G, that was something that was one of the things that was in the United States' biggest interest. Like, what other company is going to make the cell tower supply for 5G? Huawei provided part of it, but not as big as the footprint that ZTE was providing.
ZTE doesn't even have that much of a footprint. Again, it doesn't have that much of a footprint in the U.S., and so doesn't Huawei, as opposed to up to 4%. 4%.
We're not talking phones, buddy. We're talking network.
We're talking network. 4%. So, that's the number, and when considering that they rely 25 to 30% of their components are U.S. based, like that, for that kind of impact.
That's what you needed to say. Yes,
that was proportional. Well, I mean, that's the truth, and that goes into phone, that goes into their networking components as well. So, I mean, we're talking about this as like a justice for all system, but it really wasn't, because they weren't given an official appeals process to contest all of this. They were trying to get behind the scenes and negotiate under the table and make sure that they had at least a fair shot at contesting this. And well, they didn't. It ended up having to be this sort of high-profile tit for tat kind of between Beijing and Washington, and well, we're getting somewhere at least, but I'm not sure if this was the right thing.
Well, and a lot of the news on this, I kind of feel like, especially the mainstream news, is just because of the current administration, a lot of it too. So, and there's a lot of extra stuff that's kind of around on the peripheral of this that kind of adds to it. So,
I mean, as long as we get an Axon 9 and it doesn't suck, maybe, who knows? We'll have to see. In the meantime, I am going to shift the order of what was written on the rundown here just a second, because Jaime is coming up on his deadline, and we want to talk about something that he is somewhat knowledgeable in, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 850. So if you want to take
one of the biggest comments in the video that we did about the Snapdragon 835 and the always connected PC was, wait, the 850 just got announced and you're doing a video about the 835? It was funny, but we actually made that point. Like, why are you announcing the 850 now? And when you just started selling the 835? And the thing is, we're still far from the first product that will launch with 850. It's not something that's going to happen right now. Just to give you an idea, one of the major reasons why it had to be the 835 and not the 845 is because this process of creating the whole concept of the always connected PC took a year. Like, it literally took them a year to be able to do all the changes in Windows that were necessary. And obviously, each processor is a different architecture. That's the thing about ARM. ARM complicates the process a little more. And so, no. So, yes, there is the 850. It's pretty much the 840. It's like, when you talk about the A10X or the A11X processors for iPads, it's like it's got some extra components that make it better for a larger display and a more robust operating system. But I'll tell you this much, like, out of my experience using the always connected PC with the Snapdragon 835, listen, you would have to, like, grab two computers like one of them running an Intel chip, whichever you want, Core i5, Core i7, and you set it beside the always connected PC and launch anything, you can't really, like, the difference in app load times is meager, if a second at most. And then it just works, you know? For me, that was like a big shocker when I saw this product for the first time in Hawaii, because back then these were still prototypes. And back then you could fill up an Excel sheet just fine. And I was like, damn, like, really? This is a phone processor running Windows? But it's a lot more to do with how Windows was optimized and the whole emulation that Windows does for these applications.
Because we're talking about Windows 10s mostly. I mean, there are people that do run Windows 10 Pro and try to run Chrome and all that stuff.
That is a major thing. Like, our review is going to be live soon. I did read a lot of the comments where people were like, yeah, this review that you just did, I'm like, it's not a review. I had only had like 4 days with the product. I can't review.
Oh my God, it's so biased.
I can't review a product in that amount of time. We simply did a test, like, okay, is this thing always connected, and is it real or not that the battery life lasts this long? And we tested it. We went through different places, and if you do the time code, we literally spent a span of about 8 hours in different spots. And it's hilarious because people were like, yeah, but all you did was open the computer and run speed test. I'm like, what exactly do you think we were doing for the rest of the time? Or would you have preferred a video where I'm just sitting in front of this table and just, 8 hours of me just sitting in front of the table, and that's what you want as a video? Really? Like,
that would be great slow TV. They do that in Norway.
Like, seriously, you have any idea that these were 122 clips? 122 clips for that video to be that doesn't include the fact that we spent the prior day also filming, and I didn't use any of those clips because I didn't like the angle that we were going to with the video at the beginning. And so, to be fully honest, things about the HP NVX2 particularly. I feel that it's not priced. And so when we heard about this product, we were in Hawaii for the Qualcomm Summit, and they were like, yeah, the price is going to be between $600 to $800. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And you get a full year of data up until the end of the year. So that makes a lot of sense. And the product delivers. Like, if all you're looking for is like a MacBook, like, a MacBook style, you're not editing video, you're not doing AutoCAD, you're not doing any of that. You just have a computer to fill your spreadsheet, or go to college, or this and that, or just typical office work, respond to email. This is I'm shocked. I was like, all right, this definitely looks like the future of computing. Like, this is the way it should be, because you don't worry about the battery life. Like, that thing has been off the charger for the past 2 days. I obviously use it on and off, and it's great. The only problem is what Jules was mentioning, Windows 10s. So things like Chrome don't work. And here's the thing, I installed Windows 10 Pro. You can launch Chrome, and Chrome will work 90% of the time. But then there are certain things, like if you want to authenticate for your Gmail, it doesn't work.
Oh.
It doesn't work. So if you want to use it for those particular things, you have to start liking Microsoft Edge, which is probably one of the downsides. So I wonder if things are going to get better with the Snapdragon 850, or what the plan is going to be. We'll see.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, that's for sure.
It is an exciting time, but obviously there are growing pains. Like in the example that we were portraying right now with the KEY2 and Nova launcher, it's very difficult for a company to start creating a particular architecture for this new mentality that's coming with the always connected PC. So it's going to take some time. It's not going to be something that's going to launch immediately. All I'm going to say is I have been an early adopter for a ton of Apple products, and I have never had such a good experience adopting a product early as with this HP NVX2.
Oh man, well, that's just a testament to how polished it is at this point. Really, even if there are some growing pains with it, it's just the potential.
Jules will tell you, like, Jules was filming me all throughout the shoot, and I'm like, damn, dude, this thing is still at this battery life. Like,
I mean, it's pretty impressive. It is for what it does. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was like, dude, like, look at these data speeds, man. And you know, Sprint is not that great here in New York City. I was the first one that I was like, all right, I need to test this around the city.
Well, and at this point, do they have any? Are there any good Windows apps for video editing or anything? This point.
No. In general, Windows apps for video editing is Premiere Pro, man, and this is not your computer for that.
Yeah, I didn't know if
this
like
is not your computer
possible with that mobile processor.
No.
Yeah.
No. You have to
try Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. I mean,
yes. So whatever's in the Windows Store will play with it. Then that's what I tell people. Like, you can upgrade to Windows 10 Pro. I don't recommend it right now. I did it, and it says that it does work and the app does load, but then a lot of things don't work within, and so it's like, all right, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, well, hey, it's a step in the right direction, though.
I think so too, man. I think so too.
I just hope that there's like a Snapdragon 1000 coming up for next year that is comparable to like a dual core Intel. That would be cool. We're getting somewhere.
That would be definitely cool. I mean, I could give you so many examples of. It's funny how I know so many people in our industry that use the MacBook from Apple, and when that product launched, all of us were like, really, like a Core M on this, and so expensive, because a MacBook is crazy expensive, and just one port, like, seriously. And so it didn't deliver on a lot of the things. Like, for example, you do need to charge that thing every now and then. And so if you have a computer where you actually don't have to carry the charger, because, by the way, the charger on that NBX2 is horrible. It's huge. It's like, really, this thing just completely defeats the purpose of the product. That's going to be part of the review. But, yeah, I feel that just like we've got this appeal, a lot of things need to evolve into, because I'll give you an example. That NVX2 is a little too big. I was like, why is this product so thick? If this is a phone processor, why didn't they make it thinner? I mean, I would rather you give me 15 hours of battery life and not 22. Haven't proven them yet. I haven't reached 22 hours yet. But instead, just give me 15 hours and give me a thinner computer, and I would be really happy with that.
It could be part of the thermal processing, the TPU that they have to do, and also like the design.
Yeah, because there aren't any fans on that computer, so yeah.
I'd be worried about having it on my coffee table and then accidentally throwing it away with magazines or something.
No, it's just for example, I am a big iPad user. Like, I rely heavily on it, and for me, I like that form. Oh, shoot, let's not go too far. Like, my audio recorder right now is the iPad. Like, seriously, like, this for me, this form factor is just so cool. Like, I would rather they give me like an iPad Pro design, like really slim, that also has LTE, that runs Windows 10, that I could snap a keyboard when I want, but that's just so small and it feels like a notepad, because the stylus on that HP is really good. Really, really good. And so I'm like, God, this is just too big for me to use it as a notepad. But it would have been so cool. And I feel, going back to your point, it's a step in the right direction. It opens the door for these type of products to exist at some point. So I'm all game for whenever that happens.
Indeed. And we'll be up on it with reviews and all the hands-on that we need. So, and hopefully we have you to join us along. Jaime Rivera of the Pocketnow Daily as well on YouTube, multimedia manager, and
just before I forget, we have an HP NVX2 to give away. We do have an extra one. We were wondering what to do with it, but no, it's going to be a giveaway. So stay tuned. We're going to be running that giveaway next week, and it includes a SIM card for 1 year of data. For 6 months of data. So it includes everything.
Yeah.
It includes everything. So it's actually, right now, these are two products. One I'm reviewing for the video portion, and then Adam Lane is doing the text portion. And so it's within that text review that we will be doing the giveaway. So stay tuned to that text review, and the conditions are going to be there. And I I hope let the best man win or best woman win because it's actually a really good product.
Yeah, indeed.
Awesome.
Good luck to you all, and thank you for joining us, Jaime.
Thank you for having me. Sorry that I can't stay, but Adam Lane is waiting for me downstairs for something. I need to go for it, Andrew. Sorry.
I was gonna say, by the way, there's been many comments on Twitter and in the live stream chat complimenting you on your awesome shirt.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go and find where to get that shirt for myself now.
All right. Sadly, they only make them. It's ripped apparel. I'll drop in the comments of this post. I will drop a link where you can get 10% off. We have that for the Pocketnow Daily. But ripped apparel, they're awesome, man. But the problem is this shirt was only available for 24 hours. So whatever you see, there are 3 shirts, and you have to choose or lose. And so there are certain designs that are exclusive to them. And so they keep them for longer, but they're more expensive. But these, I think this shirt is about a year old, dude. And like the quality is just so good. Awesome. And I think it was just like $13. Like if you buy it on first batch, it's 13. If you don't buy it that day, you buy it until the next one, it goes up all the way up to 18. But it's one of those things where I'm like, hey, I like that strategy, and they come up with like the most hilarious designs. Ripapparel.com.
Nice. Awesome.
Nice. Indeed. And hopefully we can tell our viewership and our listenership to get it or get ripped. Am I right?
All right, thank you so much for having me. Sorry I have to go.
No problem. See you later. All right. Or see you downstairs for all that matters.
I'll be back. I'll be back up.
All
I'm
right.
going to drop that computer to Adam. All right.
Definitely. I'll see you then. All right. So I think we've reached a good midpoint in this show to be able to enter into our ad here. So we'll take a break for a second and we'll come right back. Introducing Huawei MateBook X winner. Excuse me, hold on. Introducing Huawei MateBook X Pro, winner of 27 awards at Mobile World Congress, including Best of Show Laptop, Best Innovation, Best Design, Editor's Choice, and Reader's Choice. With Windows Hello, you can unlock your Huawei MateBook X Pro with a touch of your fingerprint. Secure, fast, and no password to remember. Huawei MateBook X Pro, now available at Microsoft stores, Amazon, and Newegg.com. For a limited time, get a free $300 gift card with purchase. Visit a Microsoft store near you today. And we are back with more news of the week. I want to jump back in to stories that we might have missed, including the one that was I actually planned right after ZTE, kind of in the same vein, Huawei. So we are talking about here. So we've seen a lot of political pressure in the U.S. against Huawei, right? We've been talking about the Huawei Mate 10 Pro being denied carriage by AT&T and Verizon. Best Buy was said to have considered or may have actually taken orders away from Huawei, so they might not be stocking them in the near future. And there's just been a whole litany of recommendations against using a ZTE product or a Huawei product. But I think this is kind of taking things a little too far. Well, maybe. Especially because this kind of mixes into like the privacy conversation we're having in the landscape right now. And that is reaction. Last week, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's just like it's almost seems like it seems like it almost sort of it comes across to me as kind of vindictive based from the US government towards Google and Huawei, because of because of the fact that, well, I guess we'll let everyone kind of know, it was a Google. So the U.S. government is not very happy with Google because of what happened with their Department of Defense drone. Like they were essentially helping the Department of Defense develop some better, essentially make better drone capability.
It's software that helps scan footage for subjects, identifying them. It used a lot of Google's artificial intelligence capabilities, and it was called Project Maven. And it was reported that Google had taken its name out of the race for the next contract for that. It had been providing that support for a long time, but now it seems like in retaliation, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that a few, it sounds like Republican senators at the moment, 3 of them. I know Tom Cotton is he a senator or a representative?
Well, there was internal strife at Google because of this. Like people quitting over it, from what I was seeing, and lots of just internal commentary of how that's not what they signed up for. They didn't want to sign up for helping to develop weapons for the U.S. government, which and it's I can understand them on that. And with the current, let's be honest, it's a super toxic political environment, in DC and just in the United States right now. And so it's hard. Part of it makes me wonder if it's sort of an ideology by partisan sort of move.
I mean, we're looking. I mean, I hate to get too deep into this sort of thing, but we are looking more towards ideologically driven policy these days from more of those figureheads. But besides that point, like the whole notion of this being just a clapback to Google by perhaps pointing out its relationship with Huawei, because you may not remember, you may do, you may so remember, grammar is hard, that back in January it was announced that Google and Huawei would be teaming up to provide Android messages as an app with SMS and RCS capabilities that bring it somewhat closer to more like an iMessages with more fanciful text processing, media, higher upload limits and whatnot, and that Huawei would be serving up servers to participating networks if they so choose. And of course, that's where people started getting a little shruggy, a little fearful, that of course Huawei, being founded by a former People's Liberation Army officer, and also just having a lot of government money poured into it, and just that specter of Xi Jinping just over there.
Right. Yeah, and it's a culture difference that makes people kind of uneasy. But as far as, did they ever, aside from just that general relationship, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, and everyone in the chat correct me if I'm wrong, there's been no real hard evidence of wrongdoing leveraged against Huawei like there was against ZTE. Am I correct?
Well, I mean, there's been an ongoing investigation about what it did in terms of trade sanction violations, just like ZTE, and I think that was proven, or at least found, that they actually did. But in terms of the cybersecurity, it's more nebulous. It's more of a issue that gets conflated with others, such as in the current environment, trade, in current environment, North Korea with its relationship to China and whatnot. So, like, there are tons of conversations that we could be having on many different levels that kind of thread into this, and yet, just having it relate back to Google on this, for of all things, being able to determine who you're killing from 10,000 feet above.
I mean, I don't want to be like, okay, Google, and then a drone strikes my house, But
I think, Google Assistant, like there was that fanciful, funny little video, or I don't know how you see it, dystopian video, that clip of Google Assistant being taught to fire a gun, and it could have been
I didn't even see
you
that.
Didn't see it?
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
A little coding, and you and make sure that the servos are there, and then boom. But I mean, you could do that with Echo if you wanted, and Echo, you could argue, has had much more creepier tendencies with random bouts of laughter and
it's just like, buy more toilet paper on Amazon or else.
Be sure to press that button if you really want to continue living, and you'll get a whole bunch of Tide detergent in the process. So yeah, I mean, we're going down rabbit holes here, but yeah, this is a tough topic that at least I thought it deserved to be mentioned a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. But and it's because it's part of an on developing story, interlinking story, because it's part of a bigger overarching umbrella.
I mean, aren't all of these things really?
It's true, but especially something that's just political and it's so linked to what's going on with our government. You know, whatever side you're on, as far as that, you know, it's something that's hard when it makes it into the mainstream media like it is. People who are less knowledgeable about it are starting to actually like get exposed to this, and it's important to talk about it so that people fully understand. Because heck, a lot of members of our Congress don't really understand how this stuff works. So
I mean, a couple of years ago, we've been, you know, it was Kickstarters and Indiegogo and kind of things that gave us kind of a, somewhat justifiable outrage. But it was more kind of, we're mocking it, and it's nice to mock things that we don't have much involvement in. But nowadays, it's, you get a little more piss and vinegar in your drink, so...
Yeah, well, everyone kind of does these days without is, but I digress.
You want to talk about Sprints again?
Sure, yeah. See how they're doing.
Yeah, they're talking. I mean, they're doing something apparently. How about a $15 per month plan?
Oh man,
that might be interesting to people who are switching over. So this plan is called Unlimited Kickstart. And it's a very elusive offer because, first of all, you have to be porting over your number to the network. You also have to, you can buy your own device, or you can bring one over from a previous situation that you had. And in that case, the device portfolio would be very limited. So it sounds like it's a very, it sounds like a shot across the bow for MVNOs that rely on Sprint.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, they've been kind of doing similar sort of things for the past few years. I mean, don't even get me started about that family plan stuff that they had for a period of months.
I mean, that was an act of branding that really brought the devil out of.
I worked at Best Buy at that time, and every single time somebody walked in with whoever that they met on their way into Best Buy going, let's put us on a family plan, I was hoping I could set them on fire with my eyes. You know?
Family.
Oh my God. Well, and it's interesting though, because I've always wondered how, because Sprint a big chunk of Sprint's business comes from the MVNO sort of stuff that they end up doing, and I've always been interested to see how they balance that. You know, it's kind of like how, it's more intimate of a relationship for them, like say with Virgin Mobile, isn't it, than say AT&T and Cricket.
I mean, yeah, they have so many partners that they kind of, you know, rely on them to keep the subscriber numbers padded a little bit. But it's especially kind of jarring, I could say, that we're looking at this in the context of Sprint and T-Mobile getting through to their merger. We're looking at a Department of Justice that's finally seeking out the concerns of smaller carriers, such as those MVNOs that rely on Sprint and T-Mobile wholesale access to their networks, and worrying about rates going up as a result of this merger. So there's that happening. And there was also, if we go back just a couple of weeks ago, Freedom Pop, that runs on Sprint's network, launched another virtual network. It's called Unreal Mobile. They're kind of going through beta phases right now, but the thing was that the headline was $15 per month. So where does Unlimited Kickstart get this $15 per month thing? Well, probably from Unreal Mobile. So this is it's interesting. Of course, go ahead.
I'm curious because of course I don't really have any line of sight into where they're at in all of their negotiations. But do you think that this could potentially be a move to get more subscribers in and leverage that in the deal possibly?
Perhaps. I mean,
it's very short term for sure.
So Sprint's value in relation to its stock price mentioned in the deal is about 10% lower than it should be. So just to meet the gap, investors have been very worried about this deal nowadays. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, having looked at Sprint for a long time, they've made a lot of short-term business decisions. I feel like, especially with like their pricing jumping around with all their
totally, they're promotion happy. Anytime that they can dip it down to $50 per month for it a little bit, or get 5 lines for $100, like that's.
Well, and they never, like, their last big long-term decision they made. Well, it's probably not their last, but one of their major ones that they made a long time ago ended up blowing up in their face, and that's WiMAX. And they never really fully recovered from that, as far just because coverage and
I mean, you could say that the Sprint Nextel merger was in itself just a bomb waiting to happen because of the conditions, because of WiMAX,
and it put them in a hole as far as their like the
LTE,
the commitment to that technology that they were using, and then. Basically, that was just a bunch of money flushed down the toilet, and so they have the physical towers, but they got to put the new emitters on there with 4G LTE instead of WiMAX, and it prevented them because building more towers is expensive, and they poured a bunch of money into this technology that was kind of a dead end.
Yeah.
So
it was 4 years of just having that around, and even like as late as last year, there was a lawsuit by I think like an educational network to keep some of the WiMAX towers up because they were still using them for some reason.
Really? What are they using them on? Like Epic, a couple of Galaxy S2 Epic 4G touches out there around in
smart
the educational
projectors
space?
or something. I don't know.
Wow. Well, there's probably there's not many people using it, so maybe they're using all that bandwidth that's available for it.
Exactly. Just all that free space that they're using is just.
Oh man, yeah. It'll be. I'm interested to see how this is going to turn out, especially with how I'm interested to see how the prepaid side of things are going to turn out for all of Sprint's prepaid stuff and T-Mobile's.
Everyone is. Boost Mobile's founder is too. And
oh yeah, I mean they're gonna. I mean. Either they're gonna. I mean, they're all gonna have to eventually switch over to GSM. I would hope. Well, I mean, at least
it's a matter of
just have unlocked devices.
It's a matter of routing backhaul in. So I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you can have all the towers you want, but in the end, you have to provide the servers to interconnect with each other. So
yeah, that's true. I just know either way for where I live, I can't be on T-Mobile or Sprint. So I was on T-Mobile for a little bit, and I will say they have been doing a great job of building out. It just happens to be in some places where I need to go. It's pretty much the edge of the earth, but it's not the edge of the earth. We can see it from there. So
yeah, totally. Adam Lane was just coming in. Was about to.
Hey,
you want to come in? Just come in and bump our podcast if you want. You're here. All right, you want to say something to our audience? You want to talk about our next story about iPhones or whatever? Do you? You just want to look at the camera and make sure that we're on there. Well, that's nice. All right. Did you get the EV? Let's talk about the EV.
Yeah.
That's because I'm on an EV right now. If you don't remember the EV, this was not only the crowdfunded thing, but also the crowdsourced specs for the whole entire Windows 10 convertible laptop Surface clone thing that was started up. And I have one here. He has his unit. Do you want to show it off? Right there. Lovely. It's like show and tell. You can barely see it. Look at that. It's lovely.
Oh my gosh.
Keyboard and everything. It's and it's a kickstand there. Like it's a big metal lump of awesomeness because it's fanless, and but it has an Intel dual core processor for laptops, so hooray for that. Yeah, and well, I mean, what's the stuff that you've been hearing, Adam? And,
about the Eve?
Yeah, about the Eve, and how do you plan on going forward into your experience?
Oh, I don't know. I'm waiting for what are they going to do next? They've already released and sold this. What's the next one?
So they're planning on a backpack because, of course, you have to have swag. But also, but it's going to be one of those premium things. So who knows what's up with that? And then they also have like a full-blown laptop that they want to try and do. Here, let me just inch this over here. The screens that we can both.
I missed out on the 8-inch tablet that they made.
It was a little, yeah. It was $100.
Did you ever get to see that?
The Eve T8, and I never got to see that, but it was an impressive piece of hardware just for the value proposition. It wasn't particularly anything because it was running, I think, was it Windows? Was it RT? I think it was RT.
No, it must have been Windows 8.
Man. Windows, or at least Windows 8.
I don't think they made any 8-inch RT devices.
No, yeah, because at least when RT was still a thing, most of the 8-inch devices that I whenever I was at Best Buy were the full Windows ones, because pretty much some of the only RT devices that I remember seeing were pretty much for the most part the official Surface.
Yeah, just the Surface RT. Yeah.
And because all the other manufacturers like, we don't want to touch this.
Yeah, no one does. So what does it matter then?
I mean, every single conversation I would have to have with customers would be at least 10 minutes of me explaining the difference and making sure that they understood it, because inevitably 90% of people who bought the RT tablet would come.
Oh, it just runs Windows.
Oh, now
we have the freaking NV X2. Yeah, you're just showing off all the tablets,
that is that is lovely hardware. Oh,
that's the successor to Windows RT.
Yeah, the Windows on ARM. If you put the tablets over here, then it's Windows on ARM. See, you poor unfortunate listeners will have to suffer without ever having seen that.
Yeah, save that one for when you have kids, Jules. You know,
okay. I'm going to adopt, and that is it. All right, let's talk about iPhones for a second. I'm not sure if you want to talk about iPhones or whatever, but we'll try and see if we can make that happen. So
you're going to get Adam Lane to talk about iPhones, really?
Yeah, Mr. Lumia 1020.
Don't worry, I haven't owned an iPhone. So.
He has the P20 Pro now, and you have the iPhone 10 or whatever the heck it is. Man, this podcast has become a train wreck in the best sense.
Back on topic.
That's all right. It's just the rumors for this fall's iPhones, and that the LCD model, which was supposed to be the most affordable and be the mass appeal type, apparently is going to be delayed by a couple of months because apparently the people over at Japan Display, LG Display are having a hard time trying to up those yields for the panels, which have to be in that iPhone 10 design where the curved corners and the edge, a notch cutout has to be made for. So they're having difficulty just forming that with LCD. Now, Sharp has been working on that kind of thing, and we know that a curved LCD or a corner cut LCD is possible. It's just, like to have that run into this obstacle at Apple, especially after. Well, I wouldn't say it was a big loss for Apple this year, but obviously investors had their own estimates for how the iPhone 10 should have done, and it made record profits for Apple. It didn't do as well as it should have. It didn't cross that 80 million iPhone shipment mark. So, what say you?
Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
I was about to ask for you.
Well, and I'm just wondering with the R&D that they're pushing into this to try and get this developed. Are they? I mean, it comes down to it. Are they saving that much more than just using AMOLED, or is it a question of just supply?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's at some point the R&D has to reflect in the price tag. But it could be one of those rare things. They did it for the HomePod, where they might be taking a loss on this, or they might be doing a loss leader sort of thing, or at least very smaller margins than they would have expected.
Well, and gosh, they're selling it what? It's estimated to be the affordable models are estimated to be between
$550 and $800 starting price. Those are both
that's not affordable.
Sourced from the same person. Oh, All right. You want anything to plug, by the way, Adam Lane? No? All right. He's on Twitter at AdamZea, ADAMZEA.
Yeah, give him a follow, guys.
Yes, interesting stuff. All right. But yeah, like, where was I? It was just, I've lost my train of thought because they're talking
about the pricing. Because it's $550. Because so are we thinking that this LCD iPhone is going to be the SE sequel, possibly? Because if it is, it's launching at $150 more than the SE was. And
I mean, the continued evidence is that the SE2 or the sequel would be the iPhone sequel would be a different model. It's been said that this would be a summer launch, or at least sometime around WWDC that it would launch, and there were further delays. So we could see 4 freaking iPhones this fall.
Wow. They're gonna have to. This one, my prediction is that they're going to basically sunset the 6S and the 7. If they, I mean,
they're still supporting the 5S in 2018, which is,
true. That's true.
Well, there's one point I want to make. We'll save that for the WWDC section.
Yeah, I've got a point too regarding Apple Watch on that one. So
yeah, totally. No, I think we might have the same point then.
Oh, okay.
We'll say it at the same time with that, like a timbre or a harmony. So I'm wondering if you'll take the high
barbershop quartet style, yeah.
And I go for the baritone. But in any case, finally, one story left in this news rundown, and that is with Essential Phone in the twists and turns that the company has had to make over the past couple of weeks. We finally have a headphone jack adapter. It's a freaking audio adapter mod for that 2-pin connector thing that they have.
Where was this thing in 2017?
It was the freaking dongle. That was what it was. It cost $15. It didn't have to cost what's the number here? Freaking so much money. I don't know.
Because I didn't see pricing on this.
Yeah, no. I don't see it yet.
I would assume it's over $50 though.
I would assume so as well, because we're including ESS, an ESS Saber deck, which is what LG uses in its G series, V series. They have that quad DAC thing going on. And then there's also master quality authenticated technology that they've been heavily pushing. That basically makes more of the experience sort of sound like lossless sound. So that's what they're promoting with this. Of course, you could put in a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack or headphones and listen at your will. Despite that being, if you look at that picture, it's a pretty thick burger right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a case on mine if I had one. And so that's my problem with these mods. The way they've designed it is you pretty much have to go without a case to be able to use them. And for me, that's kind of I'm sweating right now just having my Mate 9 out of a case right now. So I don't know. I think it's a little too late right now with it. I mean, it's really cool that they're doing it. But
it was in the product line already. They said they were going to do something more with the adapter, and it was on track. But it especially stings after you read the statement from the company that said, "Oh, well, we cancel some projects," and people are kind of inferring that it's the Essential Phone 2. But we have more integral successful projects that we are working on, and then what comes out is a 3.5 millimeter adapter. So
it's good that at least they're acknowledging that, and that's nice that they have that. It's just, if it were me also, that'd be one of the first things I'd lose, because just being held on by magnets. It's better
than AirPods, right?
That's true. That is very true. And I mean, it would definitely be interesting to see how it performs compared to the dongle that they included with it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm glad to see that Essential is still putting out products despite all the really horrible press they've gotten within the last month.
Perhaps. I think it's at some point it could be just cut bait and let loose, but maybe we haven't reached that point yet.
Right, and it's just who knows how many accessories or other products that they have that's already in the pipeline that they've committed to at this point already. So,
I mean, nothing's guaranteed. At any moment, Andy Rubin can just clap his hands and stop. But
that's
we're
true.
Going to clap our hands and talk about WWDC 2018. Get excited for software. I know that you are a hardware junkie and you're not too excited about, first of all, Apple, and second of all, software, and third of all, Apple software.
Well, let me put it this way. My family is excited about Apple hardware and software. But to be honest, though, in all honesty, it's the types of things that we're starting to see, because I mean, I'm just going to say, for me, it seems like another year of them kind of catching up with Android and functionality for a lot of things, and it's good. I'm glad that the Apple users and iOS users are getting these features now that we've been able to enjoy for a long time. And because it's just good to have that, because Apple tends to push things mainstream. It could be fingerprint scanners all the way to the notch. And getting rid of the headphone jack. So if for good or for better or worse, in this case, a lot of it seems to be for better, because they're like, gosh, we're going down here. There's iOS 12 where there's performance. They're fixing with performance, especially with older devices. So they're taking advantage of what they do a little better than Android, and is supporting older devices and actively making them, in theory, faster. That's a really good thing, especially as they know now that they're not selling as much as they were, like at the same rate as they were. So they've got it. It's even more important for them to support their older devices. So I really like that. I like that a lot, honestly, that part. And then
a lot of people are just waiting for them to get the new wave in to make sure that everyone's included, that everyone can jump off the 5S bus at some point. Like, I don't think such a clean break will happen, but
there's Siri.
It's not consolidated down to like one release. It's not this 3 or 4 release kind of deal where it's all a mess and you cover all the ranges. It's just one release at a perfect price point. Like there has to be a big break going on for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's one. I'm also excited. I'm excited to see Siri not be like getting less dumb.
Well,
that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, let's totally go over these little improvements. So iOS 12 is all about performance. They were teasing a whole bunch of percentages in terms of speed, faster app launches, and faster camera transitions. Also, the keyboard display is much faster. And I understand seconds count when it comes to saving yourself time, hours, even days, because you use your damn phone all week, all just texting friends and whatnot. So I understand that. That's something that I admire Apple for. It's something that should be done.
Something that Iron Throne is saying in the chat is, we have to wait to see exactly how iOS 12 is going to perform in the older devices.
Especially with the battery throttling going on.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to be saying, because they're going to have the toggle between which ones you want to do, and how is it going to balance out, or is it going to be the same or worse once it's throttled?
Like, unless there is point blank less code, then it's not going to be that much. Like you can kind of, again, bodge around it and perhaps speed it up that way, but I'm not sure how far before we get to diminishing returns.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. The thing I'm most interested to see is how it performs in the 6S. Yeah. And then we'll just kind of see from there. Or 6S or the SE, I guess.
Or the 6 or the 5S.
Well, it's not getting have they confirmed if the 6 is getting it? Because I don't think the 6 is getting it.
No, they said it was going to be all iPhones. It was the same. It's the same support base as the iOS 11.
Oh, okay. So it was just the examples they were giving of the older devices were just the 6S and not like 6. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah.
I covered the damn thing. This was like 2 hours of my life that I have to like sit down and make sure that I'm looking at freaking not Phil Schiller's, what's his name, Craig Federighi's eyes, and not make sure that I don't fall into his gaze. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad. Also, bundled notifications. Oh my gosh! Like
finally,
I was talking to some coworkers who all have iPhones, and we ended up saving. So my coworker of mine left her iPhone 10 in a gas station parking lot, and actually managed to get it back. And I was talking to them about that, and they're like, "Bundled what?" Like, I like my long list of notifications, and I'm just like, my gosh, are you guys in? I feel like I'm talking to someone from the medieval era, you know?
I think they'll get to know what bundled notifications are in due time, and hopefully enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't wish anyone of any OS allegiance any ill will, because they live their lives on their phones too. So, I mean,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to get into some of the digital health stuff too, because that was somewhat of a talking point at Google I/O with Android P, and I think it's mostly the same stuff, really. Like there's a nap time, screen time, kind of a deal where you monitor. I'm conflating all these things. Screen time is just making sure that you know how much screen you're using per day, 5 hours, 6 hours, kind of crazy. And you just make sure that you get a report every week admonishing you for your overuse of Instagram. Allowances allows you to set up limits, and it doesn't really go that far, since you're able to actually go through with the allowance. You can actually go past the allotment by just tapping on, I want to go in for a little bit more. And then that's yeah.
Well, I'm a data is beautiful kind of guy. So I would, even if I don't use any of the limiting features of it, I love the idea of being able to go in and just see what my personal smartphone habits are in the long term, just because it's fascinating. It's cool. And then if I decide, I'm like, man, gosh, I'm wasting so much time on this. Then I can kind of do that if it turns out that I need to go out and interact with humans more. But it's nice to have that, and that's a feature that we talk about Apple start having these features, whether they're good or bad, that other manufacturers copy. This is something I would not be upset if Android OEMs started including in their stuff.
Remember that Qui-Gon Jinn is not human. All right, let's talk about Siri for a second. It's attempting to be smarter, but really it's just making sure that you can be faster. So the biggest deal about this is shortcuts. And it's already integrated into some third-party apps, but you can create your own. It reminds me of if this and that, in terms of just being able to set a hot phrase and then have the iPhone go through a whole raft of tasks and commands, telling you the time, telling you the news, or making an order or something like that. So, what's your take on that so far?
I mean, I think it's pretty cool just to have that. Like, do we know how in the weeds you can get with it? Like, as far as like setting up macros, and because like some of that would be cool, especially like if you're like, I know that they were talking about getting into your car and doing some of the.
So the one specific thing that they mentioned is Kayak, the travel reservation site. If you go into their app and then you set up a hot phrase like travel plans, you can actually pull up the information about your reservation. You got the time, you got the address. Perhaps if you really wanted to be a little bit more effort, then you can set directions to the hotel location. But I'm not sure.
And so it looks like there's like a phrase that triggers it listening to you. Then, or are you just doing "Hey Siri, travel plans"? Or
I think, well, it's kind of, well, I know that they did this for the Apple Watch where you can just raise the watch and just talk to it. But in terms of just iOS, I'm not sure that you can just say, or you have to say, "Hey Siri," I think, and then tell.
I was gonna say, conceivably, you could have it to where, since it's unlocked, you would think, oh, well, you're holding it in a certain way so that it's directly in front of your face and you're unlocking this, you're paying attention to your phone. But, I mean, if that's not a feature now, that might...
I mean, it's all about that brand reinforcement, right? Especially on that iPhone where, I don't know. But, I mean, they did remove it for watchOS, but that was kind of saving their users the ostentatious kind of gesture of having to do the raised arm for too long.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry. I'm like Jaime. I've got the Gear S3 Frontier, and it's like I lift it up. Nope, it's not coming up. Yeah, now I see my time.
Well, you play around the bezel a little bit, and then it starts activating.
Most satisfying thing ever with a watch. Yeah.
Ball bearings, man.
Yes. There's that's pretty exciting. There's another thing that I really like, and I feel like Apple has been a big in the forefront of is the way that they've implemented AR in the mainstream.
Yeah. So let's because Google actually sort of preempted them in the sense because they have that Just the Line app that they introduced back during I/O or something. They had like a whole closed beta thing, and it was just being able to tap phones to each other and then share the same AR space and doodle and whatnot. And this kind of extends that. This is being able to develop an ARKit 2, and you'll be able to include more of those experiences, of those shared experiences, playing games, knocking down blocks, as they showed off in their demo, in the same space, and just being able to play games. Also, 3D object detection. So I know this is where I go back to. So the Nintendo 3DS, you were able to scan cards and be able to show, have them display characters coming out of those cards in augmented reality. And that was neat and amazing. But you couldn't really do that with 3D objects. And I guess, well, maybe now's the time. Now's the time to implement that. So they were talking about Lego. Lego has it's a Assembly Square app, and with certain physical Lego sets, you build them, and then you take the app to it, and then, oh my God, you got extended sets. It's a virtual set. You can see what's happening in there, and basically become the mayor of the city, and just do a whole bunch of fun stuff. And that's coming from a scan of a 3D object. So that's somewhat impressive.
Well, it's nice too because Apple's AR stuff, like that they've been implementing, feels more organic, and like it feels less like a tech demo. I feel like, especially with some of the games that they are having, where like the slingshots, where you pull back and you shoot. Or I mean, heck, I'm waiting for whenever they release. They have a D&D sort of thing set up to where you can kind of, if you have some friends around, like it's just very organic in as far as like the types of games that they're coming out with that are. That like, as opposed to say Tango, where they're like, we want to have this terrible Lenovo Project Tango phone in Lowe's, and it's going to be there so you can, it felt like they were searching for.
They got away. Well, it was like a whole project that went to naught because they had that one camera solution for bokeh and all those other features, and then also, just one camera for all the augmented reality, because you have TensorFlow, you have all the AI to determine some of the other intangibles, factors that you need to place objects. So it's like the little things, like a measuring app where you can measure physical space virtually.
Yeah, it's crazy to seeing how quickly we've advanced in AR and just technology, and sensor technology and algorithm and software technology, and approach in sense because Tango started 2014, 2015.
I'm not sure when the IP started.
3 or 4 years ago, though. Like it's like the first product that we saw that was able to be sold. And
the Lenovo Fab 2 Pro.
Yeah, and then like what was it? 6 months, a year later, they Asus had their Tango phone that came out.
Asus.
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's really, I mean, it's nice to see that. It's fascinating just watching this advance so much. Like, I mean, heck, algorithmic wise, what was it? A friend of mine just got with the Windows mixed reality headset, and it used and the way that the controllers on it work is what was it for? Like it can detect where you're at as far as like the tilt, but as far as like how far forward you are and back, it bases a lot of that off of algorithmic estimation. Yeah, and so it's just amazing that all of this, like, we don't even need to have all of those sensors, and Apple is coming back to Apple on that. That's where they're capitalizing and making it mainstream, because you don't have to buy a specific niche phone to be able to do that. And they're the software that the games and software that they're showcasing is really polished and compelling, and that's one example of where you can say Apple kind of comes in and brings in a little bit more polish.
Yeah, it's sort of like that old saying, like the sword is, or the pencil's mightier than the sword. Well, you have the code that's mightier than the hammer or the sensors and whatever. So, I mean, yeah, it's great for those purposes, especially when the stakes are pretty low now. If we ever get into more riskier territory, or more kind of maybe even like surgical, they've been talking about implementing this in the medical field. That's where we start to ask more questions. But
I'd want them to be able to be slightly more accurate with the measuring before I had a surgeon AR, VR, like into my chest cavity.
5 and 3 is like, because like we saw the real time changing of the measurements. It's like 3/4 and 5/8, 3/4, 5/8, 3/4, 5/8. So
I mean, they're going to get better as time goes along, and I wouldn't be surprised if in a generation or two it's even more accurate.
I'd give it like 100 generations until personally speaking.
Well, hey, as long as it's big enough to measure, like if I'm moving someplace and trying to do what that Project Tango try to do with Lowe's, I mean, I think it's generally pretty good for that. Anything else, you're going to want to be getting proper carpentry tools and the proper tape measures. So, but yeah, I think it's good.
I feel like one of the big trends coming up is just making sure is in sexting you got to have that eggplant emoji really backed up by science, by augmented reality.
And then don't worry, then you get the memojis with it.
Yeah, the memojis.
Oh, no. Didn't you find it so ominous that they're like, now we can track your tongue? And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. I think everyone after they said that, they were just kind of like, and everyone, started moving their tongues around after that. Man,
and Charlie Brooker got into his next episode of Black Mirror.
Yes. Oh boy, yeah, and I mean, aside from there are more emojis. That's all I gotta say about emojis.
Speaking of those emojis and whatnot, let's talk about Face ID for a hot second. Looking at alternate appearance and potential iPad adoption of this thing. So, I mean, it would be practical to say that Face ID was coming for the iPad. It always has been. I guess good on them, but we still need the hardware out.
Yeah, and now there are two different ways I think that they might do this. And honestly, it's crazy, and I know it's blasphemous, but on an iPad, I wouldn't mind a notch, because it's such a huge canvas on there. Like, and if it's the same, I mean,
you wouldn't even need a notch because you already have the bezels there.
That's true. Well, if they want to make it bezel-less, fully bezel-less, that would be really interesting. It would be hard to grip. I would have to have a pop socket on the back. Just
also, would you really piss off that many tech fans from just because? I mean, they don't really actually not too many of them use tablets, do they?
Well,
because it's iPad, which is the most popular tablet around. But hey.
Well, and it's like I'm thinking more just like someone like my family using it, because like my mother loves her iPad, just loves it. We got her one of the newer ones after she upgraded from the 3rd gen iPad, And well, and she loves it. It's one of her main it's her main computer when she's not having to do hardcore stuff to get stuff done. Well, if they had the notch, a bezel-less display, and the notch. I mean, the notch, assuming that the notch would be the same size, I would hope to God it would be the same size or smaller if they had it than what's on the iPhone 10, because he would be way less noticeable. I mean, I would think, but I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting. I think it would be a gutsy move for Apple to do an iPhone 10 style iPad.
Yeah, yeah.
I just from the engineering standpoint of accomplishment of doing that, I think that would be really cool. I think they'd sell more iPads that way. I think just because of having that and the novelty of it.
It would be a combination of like Liam Daisy, which are like the disassembly robots they have for recycling parts inside, and also just like a huge middle finger. Like that would be a combination of both. It would be, wow, that is so intricate and so beautiful and so elegant, and yet why did you do this?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it would be just it'd be interesting, and it would breathe new life into the hardware side for them, just because their iPads have pretty much, I mean, they've kept the same design for their iPads since essentially since the Air. Am I correct?
Pretty much.
Yeah, like minor changes in thickness and whatnot. So I'd kind of like to see it just. I mean, I'm deathly afraid of how much they would price it at, but it would probably just be a Pro that would do that. Which that's okay. That's something I wouldn't mind so much, because the iPad Pro is kind of a luxury device anyway. I would feel like of the Apple tablet selection. So yeah. But I don't know. I think it'd be cool.
And finally, we have watchOS 5. A few of the improvements we have there are walkie-talkie, just being able to communicate between Apple Watches through either Wi-Fi, cellular. You also have refined Siri actions going on and interactive notifications, so that you can, if someone's sending you a notification to get paid through Apple Pay, then you just tap it and you have already paid. So that's great. And then a bunch of fitness features, such as competition, making sure that you get this many. I don't know how the point system works and what it converts to in terms of the Canadian dollar, but yeah, I'm sure it's worth something. Right.
Well, and the one thing that they were talking about, the automatic workout detection. I mean, that's cool in theory. I mean, they have that on the Samsung Gear S3 Frontier, and every time I'm at work and I play foosball, it's like dynamic workout. And I'm like, this is. I feel terrible if this is what it's counting as my exercise, because most of my exercise
is very good cardio. Don't you underestimate it.
No, my main cardio, most of my cardio is sucking in my gut 24/7. So
okay,
yeah, but yeah,
I mean, that's fair.
We'll see how it works. I mean, if anyone's gonna pull it off, I think Apple could pull off just it working pretty well, kind of like the same way that they pulled off a little bit better what was it, like raising up your watch and having it turn on compared to
turn on Siri.
Yeah,
you can talk to it. Yeah, amazing.
There's, I mean, the sad thing is Siri is still better than S Voice. So
that's the truth. It's the sad truth, but hey, I mean, what can you do about it? My main thing about this is that it's not. watchOS 5 will not apply to the original Apple Watches, the Apple Watch Sport, Apple Watch, and Apple Watch Edition. And yet it will apply to the Apple Watch Series 1, which is, you would say, what the heck's going on with that? Well, technically, it has the same specs as all those other watches that I just mentioned, but it came out as just a one model, and it was during the Apple Watch Series 2 introduction. So, I don't splice of hairs about that. And also, you talked about just freaking iOS just a second ago about keeping all of your support base intact for iOS 12, and yet you freaking just let go of your first Apple Watch holders. What, just 3 years after you freaking? Oh gosh.
Well, and it makes me wonder if it's just a move to get people who bought the first Apple Watch onto a newer version. I mean, I can't really think of any other reason to withhold it to the original Apple Watches unless they're just straight up trying to get them to get a newer device. That's kind of what it feels like to me.
I don't think it should be. Yeah, I don't think it should be a 3-year turnover rate. Like that's not.
It's a watch. You know,
watch. We're still comparing it to like other watches, and you know, it's not a phone that you put in your pocket, and it's like it decays more just by its form factor and how you use it. It's it's different. I kind of gave some counterbalance to that in my write-up on this news by saying that well, it's a new vertical and it could be fair because the equipment, the components are still being upgraded vastly per generation. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the other thing too. Looking at, I guess, Wear OS, it's still trying to wrap my head around saying that instead of Android Wear. Like, I mean, at least whenever the original Moto 360 was end of life, because it had the OMAP processor from the Galaxy Nexus in that thing, and so they had a reason to stop.
Texas Instruments.
Yes, and they had they had a reason to stop the support on that one. Well, and like Sony stopped supporting their smartwatch, and that there wasn't really any reason except for they just didn't want to support it anymore because it was running that Snapdragon 400. So it's tough. That's what makes me think that it's just pretty much a business move for them. Because we and Apple's not the only manufacturer who's guilty of this, but many manufacturers, it's a common strategy to try and push people to the newer devices. And I mean, they didn't sell really that many as, am I incorrect? I don't know if I'm incorrect on this.
Android Wear hasn't sold. I mean, it was far off second place.
I'm even talking about just the first generation Apple Watches compared to the second generation ones.
I think yeah, it definitely took another year for them to really gain steam on that, but still, it was still an early kind of outperformer.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm just glad that I waited to get my mother an Apple Watch until the second generation now. Oh my gosh!
Give it a chance. You got to give it time to stew and not be on the hook for your mother's technical support problems.
Oh no! Worry, I already am. You know.
Well, I mean, you already have on your freaking laptops and computer and whatever, but you don't need a freaking Apple Watch, right?
Right. Yeah. And well, it's I went through. I had both the first gen Moto 360 and I have an LG Watch Urbane. And I had the V10, so I'm like I'm tired of first generation adoption, So yeah, that's just another lesson of basically to our listeners. Just I would recommend not going with the first gen unless you're willing to live with these risks.
I mean, Juan Carlos has his own rule: 3 generations, and then, well, perhaps you strike out, or perhaps you hit a home run. But until then. I don't know. I'm more of the adventurous type anyways. So even with like pre-orders for a product, I'm going to be really trigger happy on that return policy if there's one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's, gosh, I've been more and more, and with Apple doing this, it's with their support, at least on their device, on their phones, I've been more of a proponent for having people go with like to Swappa or whatnot and seeing if they can get the previous generation device. And Apple's one of with the exception now of the Apple Watch, Apple has generally been one of the better ones to do that for, just because of software support.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I just I hope that we don't see more of these sorts of moves from them in the future. Also, another thing I wonder too is, do they do the same sort of throttling with the Apple Watch that they did with the iPhone? Because those batteries are even smaller and more tightly packed in. And
cellular was just introduced with Series 3 as well. So I mean, that's that they held out. It was reported that they held out on including cellular for Series 2 because of battery issues. But again, that's something that more analytical, more like a non-tech or whatever, would have to look into and really be able to nail down on that. So
yeah.
Until then,
well, I guess we'll see. It's interesting to see. I'm just glad that it's nice to see these new features being brought in, even if a lot of them are catching up to what other ones are doing. It's nice that everyone are getting the features, and those features are becoming mainstream.
And it's nice that everyone is tuning into our stream to learn more about these features, and have a good talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for joining us this week, Andrew Wallace of Podcast Geek Book Club, and just other things that he does in his spare time. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, you guys, if anyone's looking to follow me, I'm on Twitter at FatProduce. Same name at Instagram. I'm a co-host with Juan Carlos Bagnell for the Geek Book Club, our monthly book podcast. We're currently reading for June Station 11, which should be fun. And I'm also on Twitch occasionally as well. It's all under Fat Produce, so you look that up, you'll probably find me.
What's Fat Produce, by the way? Is it like just a huge beefsteak tomato, or like?
No, I have some family members with autism actually, and we were out visiting. We were out getting groceries, and we were in the produce section, and there was like this big cantaloupe, and my cousin just goes, "That's a bunch of fat produce," and so I was like, perfect. And
so it's not tomatoes, it's cantaloupes.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't go for like the whole melons kind of deal with that reference, because that would have turned out pretty poorly. But I'm glad that you were able to make something out of that name, and something out of that reference. So, hooray! It's a start of a legacy. I appreciate that. Man.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me on. It's always a blast to come on and talk tech with you guys.
Indeed. And same to you. And we look forward to cycling you around for another episode in the near future as well. Sweet. And in the meantime, that is it for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. But the conversation continues online, Facebook, Twitter, Google+. We are all there on Twitter. I, and in particular, am at Point Jules. Jaime Rivera at JAIME_RIVERA. Adam Lane, who's just sitting over there with his NVX2 at Adamzea, ADANZEA. And Pocketnow. Is that Pocketnow? You can find Pocketnow at all of those social media platforms as well, under Pocketnow. Pocketnow.com, of course, is where we post all of our reviews, all of the news that you need to know. And we're on YouTube, too. Jaime Rivera hosts the Pocketnow Daily for our 3-minute bite of the daily talkings going around. And again, if you want to participate in this podcast, you can do so every week. You can do so while we're live with the hashtag PNWeekly. Podcast@pocketnow.com is our email for further feedback and questions. And if you happen to be intrigued by this and are Spanish, you speak Spanish, then es.pocketnow.com is the place to go. In terms of this podcast in particular, we would really appreciate it if you write a review for us. Stars are great, but words are even better, in my old friend Adam Todd's words. And you can do that for wherever you're doing this podcast: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, wherever. On behalf of the team, I am Jules Wong, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.